Hi, I'm Brian Piper, founder of Airflow Solutions, an AI integration and content marketing consulting company. In this Pulse Check episode, I'm sharing highlights from my lightning session at the 2026 AI Engage Summit. From prompts to decision, building AI-powered intelligence briefs. In this presentation, we look at how you can take your data, your dashboards, and your institutional knowledge and turn those into AI sounding boards that you can use to better inform the content and the messaging that you create for your institution. Whether that's building tools to examine large siloed data sets for actionable insights, creating automated insight reports, or crafting interactive data-infused personas to test and validate content before it's released. Let's jump right in. So today I'm going to be talking about building AI-powered intelligence briefs. But I want to start off first with a little story. So I've got a skydiving friend who likes to jump small parachutes. So in skydiving, a smaller parachute means more speed, more responsiveness, more fun, but also a lot less margin for error. So he'd been downsizing gradually, as you're supposed to, and he'd just picked up a new parachute, smaller than anything he had jumped before. Now, every skydiver wears a device called an automatic activation device, an AAD. It's a little computer that monitors your altitude and your speed. So if you're still in free fall below a certain altitude, it will automatically fire your reserve parachute. So it's like your last line of defense. So here's what my friend didn't think about. His new parachute was so small and so fast that when he turned it to build up more speed for landing, it looked a lot like free fall to his AAD. So the device couldn't tell between him flying an open functioning parachute and him falling unconscious through the sky. So at 600 feet above the ground, his AAD fired. Now he had two parachutes out, twisting around each other, spinning him towards the ground with seconds to react. So he got lucky. He managed the situation. He released his main parachute. He landed safely in a tree, but it was one of the scariest moments of his skydiving career. And here's the thing that stuck with me. He had the data. The AAD manufacturer published the activation parameters. He wore a digital altimeter that tracked his canopy descent speed. All of that information was available to him, but he wasn't asking the right questions. He didn't have the experience to know that he needed to ask that question. He didn't know to cross-reference his new canopy's flight speed versus his AAD activation thresholds. The data was there, but the insight was not. That is the exact problem most of us face with our data today. We don't lack data. We lack the right questions. And we lack a system where we can just ask those questions without having to spend hours gathering and collecting all the data that we need to get those answers. So I'm the founder of a company that offers AI integration and content marketing consultant. Connect with me on LinkedIn, or if we're already connected, reach out and I'll send you the slides and a list of all the resources I'm going to talk about today. Every one of you has institutional knowledge that no AI model, no vendor dashboard, no generic report will ever have. You know your students. You know your processes. You know what actually drives enrollment at your school. The question is, are you building systems that leverage that expertise? Or are you drowning in dashboards that answer questions that nobody asked? So here's what I see at almost every institution. You've got dashboards, lots of dashboards. Google Analytics, your CRM reports, social media analytics, email performance. Maybe you've got a business intelligence tool on top of all of that. And somehow, with all that data, when leadership asks a question, the answer is still, let me pull the report and get back to you, or let me find that data for you. And it may take hours to sift through all that data. And by the time you deliver it, the question might have changed or the moment might have passed. The problem isn't that you lack data. The problem is that your data doesn't think. Your data needs to be powered by your expertise. That's the engine that it needs to deliver insights. Your data currently just sits there static, waiting for someone with the right expertise to ask the right questions at the right time. But you're too busy creating the next email campaign or updating the next landing page to play data analyst. So if that sounds familiar, here's the shift that I want you to make. Stop thinking of AI as something that writes for you. Start thinking of it as something that thinks with you. An intelligence brief isn't a report. It's a decision support document. It answers the questions that your leadership actually asks, pulls from the data sources that matter to your institution for that question, and then delivers insights in a format that people will actually read. And here's the key. It is built on what I call the human in the loop sandwich. So the first slice of bread is your expertise at the front. You decide what questions matter, what data is needed to answer those questions, what good looks like, what the outputs are that you want. You feed the system your institutional knowledge, your strategic goals, your ideal customer profile. And then the middle is the AI, right? That does the heavy lifting. It connects those data sources. It finds patterns. It generates the brief. It flags anomalies. It identifies insights. And then that second slice of bread is your judgment at the end. You have to validate. You have to interpret. You decide what actions that the AI suggests that you're actually going to take. AI might tell you that applications dropped 12% this week, but only you know that that's because the deposit deadline just passed, and that's completely normal. AI can track everything, but only your expertise knows what to measure. So let me show you what this actually looks like. So layer one is the custom GPT, right? So this is like your brain in a box. So custom GPTs, gems, or projects are all versions of the same thing, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude. These are little mini models that you can make that are trained on your data. So you don't have to keep entering it in every time you have a new prompt. So this is not scary machine learning training, right? You literally just upload your documents, your brand guidelines, your strategic plan, your enrollment goals, and then you tell the tool, when I ask you questions, use this data as the context. You can build these very quickly, and then it knows your content pillars, your target personas, your competitive landscape. So now instead of asking a generic question to AI, you ask this custom model, what content opportunities do we have for transfer students compared to our top 3 competitors, right? Same AI, radically different answer because the local knowledge is baked in. Now, layer 2 is automated reports. So this is like your data on autopilot. There are automation tools out there like Make and Zapier and N8N that can pull data from your analytics platforms on a schedule, feed it through your custom GPTs, and deliver a formatted intelligence brief to your inbox every Monday morning. So no clicking through dashboards, no exporting CSVs. Your weekly brief just arrives with the answers to the questions that you defined up front. And then finally, layer 3 is the data-infused persona. So this is your on-demand focus group. And this is where it really gets interesting because you can take your ideal student persona, feed it real behavioral data from your CRM and from your analytics. You create a GPT that responds like a prospective student who has actually interacted with your content, visited your pages, and opened your emails. Now you can ask it questions like, why didn't you apply? Or what almost made you choose our competitor? Or what would have made this email more compelling to you? Now, this is not a replacement for real student research. This is a rapid feedback loop that helps you refine your content before you go live with it. So let me give you kind of a practical path, right? So 3 layers, each one building on the previous one. So start off with your custom GPT, your GEM, your Claude project. Upload your strategic plan, your enrollment goals, your content audit, right? Add your brand voice guidelines, style sheets, persona documents, right? Write custom instructions telling it how to analyze and report on the specific task that you're trying to accomplish. Then test it with real questions that you've been asked previously. Then you're going to automate the delivery. So connect your analytics API to one of these automation tools, Make or Zapier, N8N. Then you set a trigger, right? It can be a time trigger. It can be an event-driven trigger. Then you're going to route that data through your custom GPTs for analysis. And then you're going to deliver the results of that either through email or Slack or some shared Google Doc. And then finally, that advanced data-infused persona feedback. So once your brief is running, create a persona GPT fed with behavioral data and use those to pressure test your content decisions before you publish. Ask the persona what would resonate, what feels off, what's missing. And then think of this as a focus group that is always available, always informed by real data. And it costs you nothing but the time to set it up. So here's a quick example of what an AI-powered, data-infused workflow looks like. So I was working with an institution that needed insights into their content strategy to know what new content they should be creating. So first we figured out what data they needed, right? What new questions were being asked that they needed to answer. So we set up a dashboard that pulled the Google Search Console data around the keywords they were ranking for and the pages that were showing up well. It was all in one place. We ran a deep research report that evaluated their current content landscape, and then we compared that against what they had laid out as their desired content strategy. We tested prompts. We built a custom GPT that analyzed that data against their existing content strategy. We built another GPT for their customer profile and then asked that persona where the gaps were, what questions weren't being answered. And then we came up with an automation. So at every month, it looks at their data, reaches out to their GPT, and continues to generate new ideas for content that is audience focused, aligned with their pillars, and focused on their strategic goals. Now, this is not from a focus group that costs thousands of dollars. This is from a 2-minute conversation with a GPT that knows your data. Not a replacement for real student feedback, but it's a rapid iteration that gets you closer to where you want to go. You don't need to be a developer, right? You can start off by just writing down the questions that you're most asked that take time to answer. Then you're going to create a prompt so you can test that out. Once you got it working right, then you create a custom GPT, upload your documents and your resources so that it can answer those questions, and then build that GPT, that project, that gem, and then set up that automated data pull to get that loop running. So remember my friend who found himself at 600 feet above the ground with 2 parachutes open, right? He needed an intelligence brief, right? He had all the data, the manufacturer specs, the parameters. What he didn't have was a system that connected the dots for him. The intelligence brief is that system. It takes your expertise, your questions, your institutional knowledge, and it references the data you already have to surface insights. Most teams are just looking at their data and trying to pull insights or generating reports. They're reacting. But if you feed these systems with your expertise, your goals, your understanding, you stop chasing where things are and you start moving towards where things are going. Your data is there. Your expertise is there. Now build that system that connects them. Thanks for listening to this Pulse Check episode. If you'd like to dive deeper, be sure to check out the full lightning session replay from AI Engage. And if you're continuing the conversation around AI insight analysis, I'd love for you to take one idea from this episode and put it into action on your campus or workplace. Thanks again for tuning in. And as always, blue skies and keep creating.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.